Gitvach from Yerushalayim Kodesh. Uh, we're holding on Daf Vav. Just to reiterate, go over some of the Yisaitis that we need to understand today's Daf. So the Mishnah had said, if you put the blood on the kevesh, on the ramp, which should not be, or you put a dam that's supposed to be above the chut sikra, below the chut sikra, or vice versa, it's a puzzle the aim by karis. It says puzzle and there's no din of karis. Okay, Shmuel said puzzle does not mean that the bottom that puzzle means that the busser is no good, but the bile would be yaitzer. In other words, a zrika shaloi bim kaimai is kim kaimai dami. That the zrika that we did shaloi bim kaimai is kim kaimai dami. That was Shmuel's sheet that we asked him, and he held serve. We're going to continue to ask on him. The next piece of Gemara to ask on him till we get the question is very, very not so pashut. To understand it, in order for something to become, there's three machshavas that can passel. One, a machshava of zrika of chutz l'makomo, which means chutz li'azara. It doesn't mean chutz l'makomo, it's supposed to be on top and it's on the bottom or vice versa. That's not chutz l'makomo. Chutz l'makomo means like chutz li'azara, or not on the mizbeach at all. That would be what? That would be one. The next, do with zrika, and one of the four actions, two is zrika, to the next day, and that would carry the karis penalty. The third, which we're familiar with, is the machshava of shaloi lishma by a pesach or a chatas. And we're going to see a fourth, like the Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, that even to leave it over, I'm shechting the carbon amas to not to zrika tomorrow, just leave it over. Hinuach, leaving it over, based upon a Mishnah later on, would go ahead and render it what? Render it puzzle. Okay. So we're going to have a difficult brisa, and at the end of the brisa, we're going to ask a question on Shmuel. Okay, ask a question on Shmuel. So what does the brisa say? We're beginning on Chavav Amid Beis, 3 lines on the bottom, Mesile. Chishev litain es hanitanim lamayla lamata, or lamata lamayla. Okay, so he goes ahead, and he has a machshava to do the zrika, and it's a different place. You know, this is zrika. It's not chutz l'koimai because again, it's not chutz l'azara. It's a different part of the mizbeach. But again, it's if he does do it, it's not a good thing, right? We said it's going to be puzzle. So he has this machshava, and then la'alta, meaning that day he goes ahead and he puts it in the right place. He puts it in the right place. So kasha. Again, you can make him the machshava to do it is not one of the 3 or 4 machshavas that's going to passel. Memela, if he goes ahead and has the machshava, but in fact puts the blood where it's supposed to go, kashed. Okay, that's fine. However, let's say after he thinks about going ahead and putting it in to go ahead and do it in the different place, then he has one of the other avoiders, let's say b'shas dahilacha or the Kabbalah, he thinks about putting it chutz l'makoim, then it's going to be pigel but not chayiv karis. Chutz l'zman, it's going to be pigel chayiv karis. Now, one of you said this is pigel is the only machshava that, you know, it has to be that karv matal, you have to go ahead and bring it properly without anything other problem. We have no other problem over here because that machshava of putting in the wrong spot is not what a machshava. Nimsa, the only machshava that he had was that when chasav a chishev to put a chutz l'makom, chutz l'mzman, so male that would be pigel. That the question on Rabbi Yehuda is on Shmuel is not from there. The question is from the next part. Okay, so chasav a chishev chutz l'makom pasal name karis chutz l'zman pigel v'chayim l'karis. However, limachar, he goes ahead and he has a machshava in the first avoida to go ahead and put the blood in the wrong place, and then in addition, Lizrika says Rika Lamacha, he's going to do it the next day. So 2 things: one, the machshava to put it in the wrong place, but however, he's going to do it the next day. Then the chazav v'chishev boy chutz l'zman chutz l'mkaimai says the Brises puzzle vein by karis. Okay, so let's get this straight. He went ahead. He had the machshava, the same as the first case. However, he didn't inevitably do it that day. He thought about doing it the next day. He thought about doing it the next day, which is the machshava of either top or bottom, top on the above the Chud HaSikra, but it's going to be the next day. Then he went ahead and he had a machshava of chutz l'makim chutz l'zman. It's going to be puzzle, but no pigel, meaning that first machshava was problematic because it destroyed your pigel. Again, the first case of that machshava was not, we negated it and it was pigel. Over here, since he thought about it doing it the next day, right? It didn't negate it, and therefore, if you had machshava of pigel, it's not going to be pigel. Fred Gemara Kasha. According to you, Shmuel, that Zrika Shaloim Koimei is Kim Koimei Dami. So what did I do? I went ahead, I had a machshava to go ahead and sprinkle the blood on the next day, which is Chutz L'Zman. Because you're going to negate the saying that the first machshava is in fact what? Good. And what did I do? I put it on the Mizbeach, Shaloim Koimei, but again, you said Shaloim Koimei works. So Mamela, I did have a good Zrika. I had a good zrika in addition to the svara of what? Of chutz le'zman, which is pigel. So freg the Gemara on Shmuel, why does the Brisa say puzzle? Ve'im by karis, it shouldn't be puzzle, it should be pigel. After all, the first machshav, you did a good zrika, but it was with the machshav of chutz le'zman. Freg the Gemara kasha. V'ish le'bim koimai, 3 lines down, 4 lines down. V'ish le'bim koimai kim koimai dami, hi puzzle. You're telling me Lamacha the next day is puzzle? Pigel who? It's pigel. And for the Gemara on Mamar Sutra, Srika Deshaya Basa Bachila Maisa they pigel, Srika Leishaya Basa Bachila Maisa they pigel. Okay, so now comes the new din. You're right. The Srika Bim Koimai, Shaloi Bim Koimai is Kim Koimai Dami. You want to know why it's not pigel? Because in order to be pigel, it has to matter the basa. Shmuel is moida that the basa is not mutter. Again, he brought a pasuk lechaper. The whole purpose was for a kapara, right? But not for the basa. So it was oilul bailam. It was mechaper. So he agrees with that. But since, in fact, this rika will not lead to what a heter of basa, then mela it's not pickle. That's why it's puzzle vein by karis. But Shmuel has held served that rika shleibim koimai is kem koimai dami. Amalei Rashi l'masutra minalacha ha. Where do you know this din from? That a zrika shleibim, that a zrika that's not going to matter the basa can't bring you the pickle. So because the pasuk says v'mhei acho ye'achel mibasaz zevach shlamav biyam hashlishi lo ye'rotze hamakro esoy lo yechashev. Why? Pickle yiyeh. Right. V'mhei acho ye'achel mibasaz zevach shlamav pickle yiyeh mishe pigulay garim loy. You know what's piggle? That the only thing that causes it to be puzzle is the piggle. Yatza zeh, this will be excluded. Shein pigil garmaloi. It's not the pigil that's causing it to be aser. Elisu davaracha garmaloi. It's the isu davaracha of what? Of doing this rika in a place where it shouldn't be done. And mela, since this rika was in a place that it shouldn't be done, right? They can't lead to pigil. Because what? The only thing that can lead to pigil is the rika that's going to mat the basa. How do I know that? Because you see that from over here, that pigel is the only thing that from the pasuk where the pigel makes it asa, and that's something else. So what's the something else over here? Is this rika for in a spot where it shouldn't be? According to you, if that's the case, then it should not even be puzzle. If you're telling me that's not a zrika in your machshava, then you're telling me it's not a zrika in your machshava, then it should not be what? It shouldn't be. So you're telling me that a zrika, a machshava for a zrika, shaloi bim koimoi, is not a machshava. That's what you're telling me, right? You're telling me the only machshava that can pass is chutz l'zman, chutz l'makom, and shaloi l'shma by Pesach and Chatas. So a machshava to go ahead and put it in the spot where it's not supposed to be is not a machshava. So why is the carbon pasa at all? That's as I read the Gemara. Rashi says lehavis rika linyan machshava. If this I have in mind to be zorik in a different spot is not a machshava, a different spot on the mizbeach. If suli nami loy nifsal, it shouldn't be puzzle. Okay, so to understand the teretz, you have to go to Daf Lamed Beis. On Lamed Beis, it says the following: the Mishnah Lamed Hey Lamed Beis, Lamed Hey Lamed Beis. Shachtu al menasla niach es damai. If you shecht it on the condition to leave over the blood, or yimurav l'machar, or the parts that go to Hashem the next day, oilo etzion l'chutz. Rabbi Yehuda Paisel. The Chachamim machshirim. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda adds a fourth machshava that could passel the carbon. We have three, chutz hamachim, chutz zman, and chatas pesach shelo lishma. He adds that if you're going to go ahead and have in mind to shecht it, to do this rika for the top to bottom to top, it's no different than what leaving it over to the next day. So Bemis holds this machshava that passels, and therefore what the carbon's passel. And for the Gemara, Ihachi of Suli Nami Love. So, and for the Gemara, Rav Nachman Yitzchak, Midi the Mahavi Amachshavas He Nuach, Valibet Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe it's like the Machshava of Yinuach according to Rabbi Yehuda. So again, we challenged Shmuel. Shmuel said in the Mishnah when it says pasal, it means that you can't eat the basar. Pasal means you can't eat the basar, but in fact it's all about Shem Chayva. We challenged it from a difficult brisa, and we're concluding that what? That no, we're concluding the brisa that it's the machshava of pigel is the machshava of chutz l'makom is a chutz l'makom of a different place is a machshava that is going to go ahead what and not passel it. Why? It's not one of the three things. So when going to Rabbi Yehuda, that what it does. The male we can understand Shmuel. Srika shleibim koimai is a good srika. Why it's not pigel, is because that machshava, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is a machshava. And again, what's our rule of thumb? In order for something to be pigel, there can't be another problem. There can't be another problem. So let's say if you shech the carbon, I'm menas to go ahead and have a machshava chutz l'makom. And then you do zrika shloi lishma with that, it's not pigel. Why? Because I have two. Over here, I also have two. The kasha was according to Shmuel. According to Shmuel, that the zrika is a good zrika, and the machshava of up top and bottom is not a machshava. So why do you just say puzzle? Say it's pigel. And that we're answering no. It is a machshava according to Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore I have two machshavas, and therefore it can't be pigel. That's the teretz, but the point is that a zrika shleibim kaimai is kim kaimai dami. We're now going to have two more opinions regarding that: the opinion of Reish Lakish and the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, and then we'll have a chart to go ahead and explain the whole thing. Not an easy daf, as I said. Says the Gemara. Reish Lakish Amar. Now Rashi tells us is going back on the Mishnah, where it says that it's pasal vein by karis. On if you put it on the kevesh or you put the top, bottom, top. Amar la'olam pasal mamish. When it says pasal, it doesn't mean pasal and the oil l'bailam. Shmuel, it's a reach what you're saying. When it says pasal, it means in gansen. It doesn't mean just the basar, like you're saying. It means in gansen. Ushloibim koimai is kim koimai dami. And in fact, what? Shloibim koimai is kim koimai dami. So if it's kim koimai dami, so l'chayre, it should, like you said, Shmuel, it should two oif in the carbon. It should do something in the carbon. V'lei kasha, kan shenosen bishtika. The pasuk that you brought, va'anina sativ, va'anina, the pasuk that you brought, va'anina sativ l'chem al mizbech l'chaper, is speaking where he went ahead and he did it bishtika. He didn't go ahead and announce that he's doing it. So he did it bishtika. Since it's done bishtika, it will be mechaper for the owner. Kan, but our Mishnah, where what? Where kan shenosen be'amira, where he said Ba'amiri is going to do it. And that's the difference between the two. Let's see Rashi over here. Kan shenosen b'shtika, drosha dekra, the mashma bailim nischapu, this mashma that there's a kapara, is kishenosen shaloibim koimoi b'shtika. He put it above the chut hasikra or below the chut hasikra when it shouldn't have been, quietly, without announcing. Umas nisan, and our Mishnah, the Ktani Pasol, is benosim b'machshava lechol basa chutz l'zmanai. In other words, he's putting it on there, and he's announcing, and I'm going to eat the meat the next day. So if he just goes and puts it on, then you know what the din is going to be like Shmuel. It's mechaper. That's the pasuk. However, when he goes ahead and the pasuk states that the Mishnah says it's pasal vein by karis, it's speaking that he announced that what? I'm putting it on here for the purpose of eating the meat the next day. Bashmina and the pasal vein by karis, and the chiddush is to tell me there's no karis. The machshava is zrikusu machshava who lives. This machshava of zrika is enough to pasal. Then come kaimai dami, because it's like kim kaimai, like you put it in the right place. V'lei lefagal, it can't be mefagal. Why? Because it's not a zrika. That's going to mat the basa. So Rabbi Shlaker says He says the same as the Mishnah is speaking pasal completely because it's speaking we had a machshava of chutz l'makom on the basar, and the pasuk l'chaper is speaking what the pasuk l'chaper is speaking what where he he was quiet. So here's the shita. Here's Shmuel's shita. The Mishnah is speaking basa of the bailam mischapru. What's the reason? Vaninasati lochem ala mizbeach lechaper bailam mechaper, but the bus is no good. And the reason why the bailam is mischaper is shlomim komus kimkomu dami. Shitas reish lakish. It's puzzle and means completely. It's puzzle. Not only the bus is also puzzle, and it's speaking amira. We had amira to eat the meat chutz l'smanoi, and right and the pasuk is the Bailam is mischaper is speaking b'shtika. It's speaking b'shtika, and he holds shlem komo is komo dami. That's the shita of Reish Lakish. Now we have a third shita. Okay, back inside. Tanan. The kishev litain esanitana lamata lamaila lamata admidi dehavi amachshavas hinuach v'alibud of Yehuda chula. This is cut and paste, guys. This is all the difficult Gemara we said until now that we asked on Shmuel. If you hold that Shalobim Komus Kim Komo Dami, so we're asking all the questions because if you Reish Lakish hold that opinion also, he's asking all the questions, and the Gemara says until we finally conclude, like we're holding the Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, that the machshava of chutz of putting it on the right place, the wrong place is equated with the machshava it's going to passel. Why? Because it's considered a machshava. It's considered a machshava of leaving it over, and therefore it won't be piggle because you have two machshavas. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Idi v'idi," two mishnayos, right? Two mishnayos. Our mishnah and the mishnah later on that says that's the mishnah we saw on Lamed Beis, guys. The mishnah on Lamed Beis that says if you go ahead and put it on the wrong spot, go ahead, take more dam and sprinkle it, right? That was the Mishnah said that there's a tikkun. You put it down, you put it down with shtika, you didn't say anything, and you put it in the wrong spot. And what do we hold? Ushleimim komo is lavkim komo dami. Rabbi Idi, I read it wrong. Okay, so what's the difference between our Mishnah it's puzzle and the Mishnah Lamed Beis that it's not? Right? And one is speaking where you have dam nefesh, one you don't have dam nefesh. So here's our final shita. That's the shita of Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Yochanan that it's puzzle. When the Mishnah says puzzle, it means completely. What does he do with the pasuk? He doesn't dash in the pasuk at all, since shaloibim komo is lavkim komo dami. These two shitas, Shmuel and Reish Lakish, hold that the Bailam is mischaper in b'shtika, even not b'shtika, because it says lechaper because they dash in the pasuk. He doesn't dash in the pasuk at all. So you have conflicting mishnayos. Our Mishnah says puzzle. I mean, base says go ahead and take the blood and redo it. Now, since shaloibim komo is lam komo dami, the first thing you did is nothing, guys. Again, shalobim komo lavim komo. The first rika is not a rika; it's nothing. So therefore, since it's not a rika, our Mishnah is speaking, there's no leftover. Because had there been left over, like the Mishnah Lamed Beis, then you can go ahead and do it. Because since it's lavgen, since it's a lavim koime dami, so the first rika was nothing. So it may have more blood. I didn't do anything. If I have more blood, go ahead and redo it. So those are the three shitas. Now we're going to ask on Rabbi Yochanan. Now, what did I Mishnah say? Puzzle the aim by karis. So Fred the Gemara Kash on Rabbi Yochanan. Now Bishlema. Tanan, our Mishnah says, Pasal vein by Karis. Bishleim el Reish Lakish, Hainu Diktani Pasal vein by Karis. Bishleim el Reish Lakish, who says that that's Rika. Shalobim Koimoi is Kim Koimoi Dami. You have to tell me a Chiddush. Since this Rika is Rika, you have to tell me the Chiddush that there's no Karis because you have another Machshava like Rabbi Yehuda. El Rabbi Yochanan. Like Rabbi Yochanan, that this Rika is Nishkain Rika, the male is Nishkain Rika. The only way to create pigel is B'shas Rika. You should have only the machshava of Chutz L'Malkim Chutz L'Zman, and you don't because you don't have a Rika. So Fred the Gemara, how can you and Amoy Rabbi Yochanan say Pshat that Shleimim Kom is Lavkim Komei Dami when our Mishnah says Pasal Vein by Karis? According to you, it's Pasha Vein by Karis. There's no Rika. Rabbi Yochanan, my aim by Karis. That's my kasha. Einochinami, it's kasha. Now, according to Shmuel, my aim by karis. According to Shmuel, it's pashit that there's no karis, right? The kivin it's speaking b'shtika, you were quiet. Where can there be karis over there? There's no chutz l'zman. You were right. I says where it says, here's the way you have to read the Mishnah. Hachi kamar. Im nosen b'machshava. If you give the machshava of what of the different spot, it's possible then by karis, right? Why? Because you don't have a srika that's going to go ahead and be mated a basa. You don't have a srika that's going to be mated as basa. Even shleim koimis can koimei dami. And it's not going to be mated a basa because we said lechaper memela, since it's not a srika that mates the basa. Therefore, you had that's the way you read the Mishnah. Pasal vein by chorus, since it's not a srika that mates it. Rabbi Yochanan, ish shleim koimei lavkim koimei dami lahavik ki nishbach min hakli ala ritzba ve'i asru. Geschmack kasha. Geschmack kasha. We saw that the sugi of Kabbalah, if you go ahead and you makabel the dam, if you makabel it in, it's sugi of nishbach, really. You makabel the dam, it spills, the asru, you gather it from the floor and you put it. Once you had a Kabbalah. If it goes directly from the neck of the animal to the floor, not. Remember, we spoke to sugya that you can't put the knife because it's going to go from the knife, and the knife is considered davar acher. It has to be just from the neck of the animal. We had the mem, goyrim, moisef, part of min adam, right? Dam min hapara, right? Min hapara. We said midam. It has to be totally from the para. Okay. So over here, what's happening? You have he goes ahead, he puts it on the mizbeach. Where's he putting it? On the top, which should be on the bottom, or vice versa. Did he do a Kabbalah? He did a Kabbalah, right? And now, where is it? On the floor, or in this case, the mizbeach. So why do you say it's puzzle according to Rabbi Yochanan? Why don't you just gather it up? Amish says puzzle in Mekaris. And we said there was no more Dama Nefesh. Fred the Gemara, what do you mean that there's no more Dama Nefesh? Gather it up from the Mizbeach and put it on. After all, the Zrika was Nishkain Zrika. It's good Geshmak Akasha, guys, right? Again, one more time. If you're telling me, like Rabbi Yochanan, that a Zrika Shleibim Kormi is not a Zrika, and you had it in the Kli, so it's no different if it's on the wrong spot in the Mizbeach than if it would have fell on the floor. Now, luckily, if it fell on the floor, you can pick it up and do it again. Rabbi Yochanan says nine dam Mishnah. Our Mishnah speaking where there was no more dama nefesh, right? So great, there's no more dama nefesh in from the neck of the animal, but you have it on the floor. So why can't you go ahead and do it? Why is it possible? That Gemara says, "Savalo kimandiyama lo yesveno." He holds like the Amma lo yesveno. Now we're going to machloikas of Yosin and Reb Shimon in a second. That if you do a zrika, that's no good. That's it. It's not like pshat. You get a second chance. The zrika, once it hits the mizbeach, it goes ahead and ruins the mizbeach. If you have left over, that's one thing. But to go ahead and you reuse blood that was done for a zrika, that you can't do. Okay, if you look at Rashi, four lines up from the bottom, kimin the zrika hi lechapara itchile. Since the zrika for kapara was pushed away, mila asvai. It's itchile mila asvai. It's pushed away from gathering it. Shall keep her? Shall I keep her? Okay, so excuse me. That's the Gemara's kasha. That's the Gemara's kasha. That since it's a like Rabbi Yochanan, you should be. It's since it's not a kapara because he says it's shalem komo. Go ahead and do it again. So what does the Gemara's Rashi say? Keep 3 lines up. Keep in the gil in mizbeach. Once it hit the walls in mizbeach, the afagav the shaloi kil chasehu. Even though it wasn't done correctly, so it's sorry to say it's like spilling since it wasn't done correctly. Kalte mizbeach, the mizbeach is coiling it. The mizbeach goes ahead and literally shelters it. La fuki mitars kapara achrita to be used for another kapara. So the kasha like Rabbi Yochanan, if tefillah shleibim koimei is lavkim koimei dami, why is it any different than if it would have spilled from the kli? If it spilled from the kli, you could reuse it, gather it. Over here, since you spritzed it on the mizbeach, despite the fat being in the wrong spot, the mizbeach is koilet that you can't use it for a kapara. And the mele, that's the reason you can't do it. And now the Gemara goes into the machloikas between the Mani Omrim who say that whether you can gather it in or not. The Amar Yitzchak Bar Yosef, I'm Rabbi Yochanan, Hakol Moedem, everyone, Sai Rabbi Yossi and Sai Rabbi Shimon who are going to argue, Bini Tanan L'mayla, Shinit L'mayla, it was supposed to be above and it goes above. Lamata, if it was supposed to be below, Shinos Lamata, and you put it below, Shaloi Kimitzvas, and you didn't do it correctly. You had a bad machshava, you did it with the left hand. Lo yasvenu. Everyone agrees you can't do it. You can't regather it. If it's in the right spot and there's a different side issue, left-handed or machshava, you can't reuse it. Everyone. Lo nechlaku. Where's the machlokes Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon? Is ela benitonen lemaila shenitin lemata or lemata shenitin lemaila. Top, bottom, bottom, top. Rabbi Yossi omer lo yasvenu. Rabbi Yossi says lo yasvenu, and that's what Rabbi Yochanan is going according to the shita. Because once the mizbeach is koiled the kapara, and it's not a good kapara, you can't reuse it. Rabbi Shimon omer yasvenu. Rabbi Shimon says what? You could reuse it. Amid base. Rabbi Shimon says you could reuse it. U Mishnah Seinu, our Mishnah kidei omer lo yasvenu. Our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yossi. Our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yossi. Okay, that's the way. That's the way Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef learned. Rav Chisda Amar Avimi, Hakol Moedim, everyone, Sai Rabbi Yossi, Sai Rabbi Yeshua, Benitin Lamata, Shenasna Lamaila, Shelo Yasvena. Everyone's moida that top, bottom, you can't use it. The culture came, Benitana Lamaila, Shenasna Lamata. Again, if it was supposed to be put what? It was supposed to be put just below and you put it on top, of course you can't do it. Again, it has no right being on the top. So Memela, of course you can't do it. And Kol Shekain, if you put it on top, and it should be shenasna lamata that you put it below. Okay, why? Because you put it on top, right? It was supposed to be on top, but it ends up because every top is going to end up below. So Mamela, since every top is going to end up below, you have a culture king that that they should be moida. So again, one more time. If you put it in the wrong spot, let's say you put it below when you should have put it below that you put above, that you shouldn't gather it together. You put it right. Kol shekain benitain lemaila, where you put it above. Shenostan lamata, where you put below, and that's eventually where it's going to end up. Hayel v'dam melyoinu lamata him bayim. Everyone's moed over there lo yasvena. Like nechlu el benitanen lefnim shenostan b'chutz. The machlokes is what is you put on inside mizbeach on the outside mizbeach, or vice versa. Rabbi Yossi, you can use it again. Rabbi Shimon says you can't use it again. So machlokes amarayim is to where the machlokes Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon is. According to the first opinion, it's what the machlokes is between top and bottom. According to the second opinion, it's between inside and outside. We also have a raya. Rashi says the Isla Rabbi Yochanan the Amar the Islay lo yasvena. There's those that like Rabbi Yossi. V'afagav the shaleibim koimai lavkim koimai dami. Even though what shaleibim koimai, if you're not in the wrong spot, it's not as rika. Le'inyan kapara le'inyan asifa miu kaltem isbeach. So we have going to bring a brisa, a long-winded brisa, and at the side is what that even though Rabbi Yossi says as rika shaleibim koimai, it's lavkim koimai dami. Once it hits the misbeach with his rika, it's finished. Like Rabbi Yossi. Good. Let's see it inside. Long-winded brisa. Rav Nachman Yitzchak. Afnan Amitanina. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Now we had this in Harias. Zois hi ha'oila. Tzavis Aaron ves Bonov Leimar. Zois Toiras ha'oila. Hi ha'oila al mizbech by Kol Alayla. And a boiker veish mizbech tuchad boy. So we have three miyutim. We have Zois, we have he, and we have the hay from ha'oila. Harielu gimel miyutim. Put in gimel. Put the word three miyutim in there. Prat. This would exclude lenishchita b'layla. It was, let's say, geshech at night. It says by yom savoso, the carbon has to be bought during the day, and you bought this at night. Then it's not going to be good. That, in other words, if the blood goes up, it calms down. Ushenishbach dama, if the blood spilled and you gathered it and you used it. Usheyatze dama chutz the kloyim. I get nishbach dama must be speaking where it fell from the neck of the animal, right? It must be speaking where it fell from the neck of the animal. And the third place would be is where the blood leaves the claim. So we have zois, he, ha'oila. To Imaya, three cases where if the blood is used, it's teirade, it comes down. If ha'oila teirade, right, is if the animal was slaughtered at night, or it came from the neck of the animal on the floor, or what, or the dam went outside the kloyim. And also, if it goes up, teirade, it comes down. Shimon oila. Rav Shimon is more inclusive. Oila, ingli el oila kashera. Minayel rabbis. How do you know to be marba? Shenishla b'layla, ushenishbach dama, ushiyotzu dama chus lekloyim. So in other words, right away he's arguing those three cases. And now addition, v'halon, you left that overnight. V'hayotza, and it went out. V'hatame, or it became tame. Usheniskad chutz l'smanai, or you had the machshava pigel chutz l'mkoimai, ushekibel psulin, or apostle went ahead and was mekablet, bizarku es damai, or he did zrika. Panitana l'mayla shnasan l'mata. This is what we need. Panitana l'mata shnasan l'mayla. Panitana b'fnim shnasan b'chutz. Panitana b'chutz shnasan b'fnim. V'pesav hachata sheshachtan shloi l'shmon. Minayin that in all these cases, if the blood goes up, it stays up. Kamad loima toiris ha'oila riba toira achas l'chol ha'oilim shem olu lo yardu. If they go up, it doesn't come down. Okay, so Imamish includes Imamish includes everything. An animal that did an act of znus, for a niv, or an animal that an act of znus was done to it. An animal that was set aside for avodah zarah. An animal that was served as avodah zarah. And you don't have edim, so therefore it's not killed. For esnan, or it was used to hire a zaina. We switched it for a dog. By kalayim, by treifa, v'yatzid. All these cases, if the blood goes up, it calms down. So therefore we have a miyat. Again, we didn't get to our proof yet. The Rabbi says, Elu, why are you including the long litany list that could, if it goes up, stays up? Elu, and exclude the Raveya, the Nirva, the Neva, the Muktzah. Marbani es Elu, the first cases, the Tameh, the Nishchat, all those cases, Shahoy Psulim B'Kodesh. Those are all Psulim that happen in B'Kodesh. They're unique to Kodesh. These happened before you got to the Kodesh. All these happened before. The other ones happened during the Kodesh. That's the difference between the two. Okay, where's our Afanana Mitanina? Ketani Mias, Hanitanan Lamata, Shenasan Lamaila, Ulamaila Shenasan Lamata. Right, we mentioned this. For like Polig Reb Yehuda, and Reb Yehuda did not argue. Reb Yehuda gave a list of the three cases that Im Olu Yardu, and he didn't argue by this one. My time, Alam Mishum Dekalti Mizbeach. What's the reason he didn't argue? It must be what Mishum Dekalte the Mizbeach. So in all these cases, what we said that Im Olo Yardu is that not that dam is going to come down if because you use the dam. It means the pieces of meat of the carbon will stay up and be burnt. So over here, Rabbi Yehuda did not argue. He argued in three cases. He argued in the case of nishbach dama or nishchta balayla or shiyotze chutz kloyim, but he didn't argue in the case if you put the blood in the different spaces. If you put it top to bottom, bottom to top, and he said that it stays up there, meaning you're not going to take it down. It must be because that the mizbeach was koilet, even though the zrika was done in the wrong spot. So afananami tanina, we're learning the side that you can't reuse it. Again, that's what we studied Rabbi Yochanan. Kasha was like Rabbi Yochanan, who says, Tfilish Srika Shleim Koime is Lavkim Koime Dami. So why don't you go ahead and gather it from the wrong spot and put it back? We said, because once you used it, the Mizbeach is koilet, we saw as Rashi on the Amid Aleph. Once it's koilet, it's finished. Once the kapara is done. So the same thing over here. Since you put it in the wrong spot, you know why the meat stays up there? Because this is the positive klita, right? It was koilet it that in Lolu that the meat stays up there, and the would say raya from a Tana Rabbi Yehuda to the din of Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, that's the Gemara's raya. Ketani, let's just see it inside again. Ketani mias. Nonetheless, you learn Tani Tana lamata shnasan lamaila shnasan lamata. Like Polig Rabbi Yehuda. Why? It must be what my time alam mishum the kaltim is beach ushmamina. Shmamina, that if the mizbeach is koilet, that the meat doesn't come down. Shmamina, if you did a zrika shlebim koimai, you can't go ahead and reuse the blood. Why? Because it accomplished. It was koilet. Amr Velaza, new din. Mizbeach hapnimi mekadesh psulin. Mizbeach hapnimi mekadesh psulin. Let's say you go ahead. You're bringing in blood from a chatas. Example, it becomes puzzle of once it enters. So now you can't put it. What are you doing with it? You go ahead and you put it on mizbeach hapnimi. You will be able to go ahead and that it would go ahead and the meat on the mizbeach would stay on the mizbeach. That's the chiddush. Okay, mizbeach hapnimi mekadesh psulin. My kamash malon tanina. We learned it already. Hanitanim bifnim. Right. We just said. In the long-winded brisa. So we said that what Imalu layardu. So what is Rebbe Loza? What is Rebbe Loza telling me that I don't know? He's an Amira. Pashtas we know from the Brisa that we just the long-winded Brisa of Rabbi Yehuda that stated like Rav Shimon that if you go ahead and you put it up, whether it's the wrong spot or inside out, so it says what layard layard. So what does that mean? Layard? You put the dam bifnim, and then the animal was put in bechutz. It stays up there. So what's Rebbe Loza telling me? It says when we just had that brisa. In other words, the only thing that would be im alu yardu as a result of what you put on the mizbeach hapnimi would be blood. Why? Because the mizbeach hapnimi, there are times, even though it's primarily for burning ketairis every day, right? We know that there's halacha of on Yom Kippur. You go ahead, or the chatas panimius, or right for the par helam dava, as we saw in Harya, you saw kind of Mashiach, you're going to daub it on there. So I would say, when you say emal yardu, because you put on something that's blood. Aval koimitz, you hear this? Koimitz. You went ahead and you put the koimitz on, which has no shaykhs to it. The koimitz would go ahead and make the carbon a valid carbon. Aval koimitz loichazilei emaloi kamash malon Rebbe Loza that I feel a koimitz. Basically, how can you tell me that that the koimitz something like this that the mizbeach hapnimi is koilet? I got a problem that is Ketaris Zara, that means the Ketaris of a Yachid rather than the Ketaris of a Tzibur. Sha'ala Lagabi Mizbeach, that goes up on the Mizbeach. Tered, it should come down. Rashi says, Ketaris Zara, Ketaris Nedava, Shlei Hitter HaKosav El Ketaris Shal Tzibur, Shachrus Arvis. So this is Ketaris Zara. So what happens if you bring it up? It goes down. Shein L'cham Migdash Misulim El Mizbeach Achitzain Beroiloi. Only kli in the Beis Hamikdash that can kasher something that's puzzle is mizbeach hachitzain, like we just listed. But mizbeach hapnimi, if you bring in a ketairis, no. Says the Gemara, the Gemara chitzain in pnimi loy kashan Rebbe Elazar, and the Gemara tiritz hachi ketairis zara she also the mizbeach hachitzain terid. You thought it's going on the Mizbeach Pnimi. No. You bought Ketairis on Mizbeach HaChitzain Tered. She'em Mizbeach HaChitzain Mekadesh Psulin El HaRoilai. The Mizbeach HaChitzain has the capacity to Mekadesh something that's puzzle, is speaking about something that's right for it, like blood. Pnimi, but however, the Mizbeach HaPnimi, Bein Roilai, like Dam or Ketairis, Bein She'en Roilai, like Kaimitz, right? It could go ahead right and make things right. In other words, my time. What's the difference between mizbeach hapnimi and mizbeach hachitzain? High ritzpa. Mizbeach hachitzain is a ritzpa, says Rashi. High ritzpa, bibinyan avonim shlei nimshach. It's the binyan of Shittim Ves says the binyan of Shleima was made of avonim that hadn't been anointed. The fikach ain't kedusha bizet chamura. Its kedush is not say chama, and therefore it only came in kaddish roila. Mashen came v'hai klisharis. Mashen came mizbeach ha'klimi is a klisharis. Since it's klisharis, it has the capacity in kaddish bein roila, bein ein roila. Good tevach. I hope everyone had a good Shabbos and a good Mayid.